We're known to obsess about a few things, much to the chagrin of our respective partners. Bags, pens and pencils, notebooks, books in general. And then there's cooking, which doesn't require a lot of tools to get started with. But to do it well, you need good knives. Good meaning that they're comfortable to handle and that they are and stay sharp. Good knives also require care. You need to worry about how to best store them so they don't get dull or dented. You need to keep them sharp. You need to keep them clean, especially the carbon steel kind, my personal favorite. Knives may seem like such a mundane thing to care about, but there's something deeper about the admiration we have for a really good knife. We care for our tools. We care for how we go about things. We care about the little details, like using the right knife for what we need to slice. That care, that attention to detail, to sweating the small stuff, translates into the work of management. It's the thread throughout our book. Good tools and a thoughtful, dare I say intentional approach to them helps you consider more than just the immediate problem to solve. You look for solutions that last. You build frameworks that you can reapply again and again should a similar situation emerge. You consider what the people in the organization, in your team, would want and the questions they'd ask. You look at a problem and the solution from many angles, gathering as many perspectives as possible and as reasonable. That's our style of management. It's the one we're teaching our clients. But just like with knives, that style evolved through experience. It's only through constant reflection that we manage to home in on what the right approach for our specific team and the problem at hand was. I personally love talking to folks who themselves care about knives. Sara and I both have knife guys. Folks we know do a great job giving dulled knives a new edge, and we care about the craft of making them. I could talk to my knife guy for hours. It is no coincidence that, on our recent trip to Montreal that we did together, Sara and I visited a Japanese knife shop to buy partnership knives. We like getting something that's unique for every time we get together, which usually doesn't happen more than once a year. So whenever I use the knives I got, a Japanese cleaver and a santoku knife, I can think of the time we were in that shop, slicing carrots with different knives, not really knowing what to look for in the knives we were looking at. But eventually, we each had knives in our hands where we just felt that they're the one. Also, at this point, it shouldn't surprise you at all that I brought a knife with me on that trip from Germany to make sure we've got a sharp knife to cook with, because we do love cooking. Today, you get to listen to us geek out about one of the topics we love talking about so much: sharp knives.
Well, hello. We're going to switch it up a little bit, and we were giving ourselves permission to talk about something that is not necessarily or immediately related or relatable to management and leadership and those kinds of things. But who knows? Who knows where we're going to take it? And so today we're going to be talking about knives. And kitchen knives specifically. Like, just want to be clear, like, this is not about like everyday carry knives or things like that, or, making a hobby of collecting hunting knives, stuff like that. No, the really, truly practical kind that or at least that we use every single day, multiple times a day even. And it's a weird and fun thing that developed between us. And that is also like a tiny arc in our book. And funnily enough, the story about knives and, the two of us almost goes back to the very beginnings of when we met. And this was in 2018. It was a lovely September in LA when I was visiting. And a thing we bonded over early on was, cooking food. and cooking as a communal activity. And I offered to cook. It must have been a risotto, probably. It's, I mean,
I think it was risotto. Yeah.
well, I was in your kitchen and I actually was curious, like how you experienced this story before I maybe share mine. From my perspective, I'm just curious, like this is German complaining in your kitchen. Uh, it's,
Well, I just had a couple thoughts. One is the 2018 version of you was you didn't like help in the kitchen. So
true.
when you were in the kitchen, it was like to just stay out of the way, really. And then I think you were looking for, you're looking through drawers and things and trying to find what you needed. And I think it was a version of like, this is garbage. Like all of a sudden you were trying every single knife and you couldn't find one that was sharp. Everything was dull. And I started to feel slightly mortified. I mean, we're still pretty new in our friendship too and working together. So it was like, humiliation. Thankfully, you did find a knife that was suitable.
I did find a knife. Yeah,
it was sharp, but majority hadn't been tended to in a while. And we had just moved into that house pretty recently. It was a rough year, but no excuses. Knives should be sharp. So then, was it that same trip that we just happened to be doing some grocery shopping over at Whole Foods, and there was a sign outside of Whole Foods said knife sharpening?
It was that same trip. Like I complained and I still already brought the solution. Like
It's true. That Whole Foods had a weekly knife sharpening service. Gary, who does knife sharpening and now is my knife sharpener. Yes, I just call him directly now. I just go direct to the source.
You have Gary's number. Wow.
Yeah.
It is interesting to hear this story from your side every now and then. Yes, I maybe must have given an odd first impression being in the kitchen. As Germans, we may be, as a people, we might be more forthcoming in the things we don't like. And maybe that is, or at least at that time was more pronounced in me as well.
You also did have some opinions, I will say, about how many measuring cups and measuring spoons. I have a whole drawer.
You do you. It's fine. Like, it's all fine. I will also say for the record, and maybe you can confirm this, maybe not, I've tried to open up my cooking to involve other people. But I will fully admit, I have been very, let's say, territorial in the kitchen when it comes to cooking and haven't really liked having help. There's a whole other story in there about delegating, and what that means. I want to say I've tried, but also I still enjoy being in the kitchen all by myself. I do appreciate the solitude that I get. I oftentimes cook on my own, but also, maybe that's also a behavior, or an expectation that I have conditioned in the family rather than, explicitly, set expectations. It's just something that people have gotten used to and I've gotten used to it. And so it just keeps reinforcing itself. But maybe overall, and maybe that's also how we bonded, was like cooking is even if you do it yourself, and you serve food to other people, there's still something very communal about the activity. Right. And I mean, at least for me, there's a joy of feeding other people. And even early years of being a founder, this was before we met. I was coming home at a reasonable time and cooking was just like, there was an instant disconnect. There was an instant moment of leaving something behind.
Yeah, I think I had the same view on that. It's like, what's so satisfying about cooking a meal is that you plan it, you do the shopping, you cook it, you have the payoff, you have the meal. And it's this project that happens in a shortish period of time, and you have this nice meal. And in our work as founders and executives, our work spans often weeks, months, years, and the projects are often quite long. And so it just was a nice disconnect. Come home and have this thing and like just mental switch, creative switch, and have a meal at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very short-term thing in some ways, right? Like it's even though there is this whole process of shopping and then, doing your mise en place and the activity of cooking, it's still very satisfying.
Yeah, we're having a friend over Saturday night for dinner. And I was just got a couple cookbooks off the shelf because I was like looking for some inspiration, just something different. And we also gotten a rut, haven't been having friends over as much. So 'tis the season here. We're recording this a week before U.S. Thanksgiving. We're going into the holidays, so I suspect we will be hosting some more dinners, which will be nice. Get me out of the rut.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, it's that social part, which is also nice. Sometimes when I serve a larger group of people, like I get so engrossed in the kitchen and serving the food that there's not always time for me to really rest or even enjoy the food, but somehow I still enjoy that. It is quite odd. It is nice to look around a table and see stuffed faces that are satisfied with the food that was put on the table. Like is for Christmas we might have 8 of us or even 10.
Well,
And just in Germany, the Christmas holidays are usually when the feeding frenzy happens, as we don't have a Thanksgiving. Thankfully, I don't have to play Santa this year for our neighbors. That was always a bit of a distraction because it always happened just before dinner. The interesting thing is always to have my mother over specifically, because I mean, and I say this in the sweetest way possible, also somewhat territorial in the kitchen, and just spend even like for as long as I've known, even though she was a teacher, when she was working, spend like a ton of time in the kitchen. Um, didn't always agree with what she was cooking. And I think my cooking is, I would like to say, very different. But I also, this is one of those moments at times where it's reflected back to me, that there is a part where I'm very similar to my mother. Even though I try, I try not to be. How was this with your parents and family?
Yeah, my mom was the main cook in the house, cooking. I'm the youngest of 4 kids, so there was 6 of us around the table. So many memories sitting on the kitchen counter watching mom cook. And then when I got to a certain age, I got to help, and that was like I think my introduction to cooking and just whether it was helping her with some of the prep or the cleanup or we'd make something special together, usually a dessert or cookies or something. But yes, mom was stay-at-home mom with 4 kids. Dad would come home. Lots of memories of dinners together as a family. It was always really fun when it was taco night. Like those are like taco night or spaghetti night were just so great. Definitely nights where didn't want to eat, of course. Also did a lot of grilling, barbecuing, grilling. Yeah, a lot of great memories there. And we were talking about I've inherited some of my parents' kitchen knives, passed down, still in my knife drawer today. I don't even know who makes them. I was just looking before we hopped on. I was like, I think they're German made. My bread knife, serrated bread knife, and kind of just a simple vegetable knife were from my parents.
That's nice. Yeah, I've been at the stage where I've given my parents new knives. I think I gave my mom 2 new knives last year for her birthday because like I think it's sometime in maybe May or June. We were in the middle of asparagus season, which is just around there in Germany. Specifically white asparagus, and I was doing a hollandaise sauce. And for that, you need to cut, some shallots really finely. And then I used her knives, and it was so much worse than in your kitchen. Like
It sounds painful. It sounds
it
painful.
was really
Yeah.
painful. Yes, it was like I didn't understand how you cut anything rather than just press it down really firmly. It was very frustrating, and it's like I looked at these knives, and they were very cheap, very old, and I was like, okay, I know what I'm getting her for her birthday. And of course, then when she got them, she cut herself quite a bit because they were just, she wasn't used to them being so sharp.
I read that, or maybe, did we talk about this? Like that sharp knives are actually safer for you than dull knives. And
We
the reason
probably
being is
talked
like
about it.
when it's a dull knife, you have to push harder, right? Like you have to, and the hard pushes kind of leads to more slips and accidents versus a razor sharp knife being just smoother. And but I guess if you're not used to it, yes, the switch from a dull to a sharp knife could be pretty jarring. We both have had kitchen accidents. Mine was with
This is true.
a mandolin.
I mean, those things are just dangerous. Like this,
Very dangerous. Now there's a rule. There's a rule in my house where you can't use that without the safety glove and without the little attachment. Like I just
you have a safety glove.
I
I've
have
been using a mandolin twice, maybe last week, and I kept thinking back to this, and always use the thing where you put stuff in.
Yeah.
I think it was the same thumb even that we had. Like
It's only at about 80%.
Oh no, it was the right one for you, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, it was the left one for me. And for me, it was actually, it was a sharp knife. Like it was my favorite knife, and it is super sharp. But I was cutting, pretty sure it was either kale or chard. So something that, is harder to cut, where you're more tempted to, slam the knife down. Yeah. But it's still.
I was cutting green cabbage.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, that'll also do it, I think. And the usual where a sharp knife helps is when most things you slice more, and it's easier and nicer to just pull the knife over the board and rather than push it down. But it was a very clean cut, just like it probably was for you. The mandolin is ridiculously sharp.
Ridiculous.
And I have no regrets there about a sharp knife. And you now have Gary. And I, of course, also have my knife guy here. And thankfully, I have a knife sharpener just.
What is your knife guy's name?
I don't know what his first name is because that's not a thing here in Germany.
Okay.
But I do like even chatting with him. Like I've bought a couple of knives there. I bought the knives for my mother. They even have a knife showroom around the corner which is, I was there, and it's almost like a knife studio where you have just a display of knives, and that's a nice big work surface in the middle where you can try out the knives. But I also I went through all of our kitchen knives here and gave them a proper resharpening so that they are, they're ready. They're ready for the holidays. But yeah, since that story, 2018, presumably, you've been to Gary more than once and have enjoyed sharp knives ever since. And probably now, whenever I come over, is that fear still there? Is that still present?
Yes. For sure. The week before you arrive, we sharpen the knives. Yeah. Sometimes it's just doing it at home, but yes, it's still a stress that you bring when you come to Los Angeles. We have to make sure. And it is, I think, one of the first things you do when you arrive in the home is you check the knife drawer, I think.
I like to look at myself there also as a catalyst in some ways, right? My presence ensures that the knives are sharp.
Maybe this is the good transition of how we can talk about sharp knives as it relates to leadership and management and our approach to leadership and management. One of the pieces of feedback testimonials we got from our book was, it's sweating the small stuff. And this may all sound like small stuff, like it is, keeping your knives sharp, but very much important to focus on the small details, because all these small details add up in the kitchen and and in companies, right?
Yeah, there's a whole thing there where it is useful to think about, like, what is the right tool for this particular job, right? That is true in the kitchen, and that is also true when you're in a company, in your management or leadership role, where you don't just come in and apply, well, just something very generic or something you've applied everywhere else, but rather think about, like, how would this land here? What does this company or what does this team need? What concerns might they have? What hurdles might I need to overcome and how could I address that? Where it fosters the kind of thinking where you look at these details rather than drop in just the universal framework of management
Right.
that you drop in everywhere. Yeah, really think about in the metaphorical sense, like which is the right knife to deal with a specific situation, or then what's the right approach to think about a specific situation, and is your approach to so to say sharp enough for
Mm.
the job you have in hand, right? Like think about like cutting sushi, right? Fish for sushi. It's like one of those art forms where you practice it. Like if you want to be a master of sushi, you practice it for like eternities. And somehow in management and leadership, it tends to be oftentimes, I don't want to, throw everybody or ourselves in one pot. There's a tendency to drop something in and just
Yep.
leave it at that, right? You drop something and you never look at it again. You hope it works. You assume it works. You assume everybody gets it. And then you're frustrated that that is not the case.
Right. Yeah, it's that paying attention, making sure right tool for the right job. uh Paying attention when things are dull, when something's not working. Um
When things are dull, that's
and
excellent. Excellent metaphor. Yeah. That it does work
uh,
in a team and in an organization.
and then pausing, right? Pausing to sharpen, pausing to listen, pausing to just to pay attention when something's not working, and especially when you're introducing something that's new or different or a change.
But again, like there is also this thing of, having a drawer full of knives and there are too many of them, right? I think that can also
Yes.
work. And that's how I added knives to my repertoire. Like I added a knife when I saw a need, right? When I saw something in the kitchen emerge that I haven't done before, like making sushi as one example, where the knives that I had, excuse the pun, just didn't cut it, right? Or they didn't have, the right the right form or shape to do the job really well.
Right.
And there is, again, we come back to sweating the small stuff where and it's not just an arsenal of knives where you just grab one and hope it works, but even adding to that drawer to me has been, at least over recent years, an intentional process. Like I started out with just normal chef's knife. It was a German one, but it's still a somewhat generic knife. And in a similar way, I started out my management career, with a very generic and abstract, an idea, of how it could be without really having, any way or any knowledge of translating this into, the actual management work. And that's why it
Right.
just took years just like it takes years to build up a nice set of knives, to build up the right tools you can bring into a team, without overburdening them, without it being too dull or without, cutting fingers. And it requires a care, right? Just like caring for your knife, or caring for the tools that you use. I think it translates incredibly well. So I'm
Yep.
always thrilled and chuckling to myself that this is a story arc that's been a part of us, like since the very beginning.
So very
And
beginning, very first meal together, home cooked meal together. Yeah.
it's caused pain, but also it maybe created a different level of appreciation for something. I
I
don't
mean,
know.
it made it into the book, so there's
It
that.
did make it
Made
into the
to
book. I keep thinking about one analogy in leadership that just recently came back into a coaching conversation, was about handling large changes in an organization. Right. And I think we covered part of this in our episode on difficult conversations. And maybe also talking about reorgs. But there's, even in this process, like there's no one knife, there's no one approach that you could use, no one tool to go through this process of managing and communicating, controlling whatever, a large change or shift in an organization, right? Whether that is a contracting change or whether it's a big shift in direction where you really need to pay attention to the smallest of details, where you need to most cut something really big into the smallest pieces that you can and look at every single piece individually. And where you really have to have, again, to use this beautiful metaphor, a sharp knife, like through this entire process, even as you're planning it, as you're executing the process, and then whatever happens afterwards, right? That's the kind of stuff I keep thinking about.
Yeah, so important when you think about. I mean, I was just thinking about one time in particular where we were in the unfortunate situation where we had to do some layoffs. We had to let some folks go from our team, and such a painful experience for everyone. Certainly for the folks we had to let go. But one thing, talk about sweating the small stuff. When we were planning for that and preparing for that, we had I remember a spreadsheet down to the minute planned out for how we were going to communicate across the company and to these individuals, and all the pre-planning and just conversations we needed to have, and preparation and paperwork. And I think it's critical. It's important to pay attention to really figure out what tools are needed at what stages and what steps and what people you have to do it with that aligns with how you want to build your culture and build your teams.
Yeah. I think there's also something in there where, the keeping knives sharp and looking after them, oiling your cutting boards, not just because it makes them look good, but also because it, helps keep the water out of the wood. There's something there where I think that care and also appreciation of craft, even just thinking about how a knife is made, or like I bought a knife off someone once at a market in the south of France, and he made those knives, and they were Damascus steel, so these nice folded steel that is then dipped in an acid bath, so you can see the wiggly lines on it. It was fun to buy it from the guy who actually made it, and I appreciate that. Even preparing for this, I've looked into, surely there must be someone in or around Berlin who offers, workshops to make your own knife, which is a whole rabbit hole I got into. But anyway, there's something about this level of care, appreciating the craftsmanship, that I think people should do more of in management and leadership, right? Looking at management and leadership, which is a process of building up a set of skills, a set of tools, a set of processes over time, and that they still need honing. You can't even take for granted that one approach that you have works in every single team. But there's a constant loop of feedback, of trying something out, caring for it, crafting it the right way, and then seeing, is that the right thing to do here? Maybe it's stretched a little bit far, but I mean, it's just that care and just appreciating the work itself, which is,
I don't think it's too far. Yeah, I don't think it's too far. I think care it's such a good word here. Just appreciating the craft and the care around being a leader and being a manager, and taking the time to learn it and study it and improve and sharpen. I mean, all these metaphors. I think we take for granted. This was my experience. I got promoted into a management role and I had no idea what it meant or how to do it, or until I really started talking with other managers that I admired and started reading books and talking with others, and I really figure out what it meant for me to be a manager, and started to really care about how I showed up as a leader and how I showed up as a manager. And gosh, it took me so long. And I think that it's an important thing that folks really look at, appreciating the craft and care that it's required to be a leader, to be a manager. It's a big responsibility.
Agreed. And that's why I took that feedback that I don't, do well in the kitchen and delegating. I did take that seriously over the years, but
yeah, you've gotten better.
Probably not there yet. But I mean, I think this last time I was there, I think I want to say it worked better, but maybe I'm just,
No,
tooting my
it did.
own
I remember last time you were here, we made ratatouille, and I helped with a lot of the mise en place with the prep work. So there you have it.
Okay.
Probably time to wrap up.
On that note, to wrap up, what's a fun thing that you've been doing lately?
I mean, I love just going to the beach. This week met my childhood friend who I've known pretty much my whole life. She's got a puppy about the same age as our dog. It was just a glorious day on the beach. Dogs were happy, sunshine, everything was clear, the air was clear. So yeah, that's fun for me, is just getting out to the ocean and seeing the beach.
So one thing we're missing in Berlin is a beach. Yeah, for me, I am today wearing the shirt from the second band we saw as a family in London, Inhaler, a band from Ireland. We saw them at the Royal Albert Hall, and it was beautiful. It was a lovely concert. I think, speaking of cooking and knives, like a book I recently picked up is The Anatomy of a Japanese Knife. Speaking of
Nice.
history and visiting the traditional forges, this is exactly what they do here. Talk about the different Japanese knife shapes and forms and how they're made. Well, on that note, we're going to wrap this up.
We're wrapping up.
And we'll see you in the next episode.
Toodles.
See you then.